Oh, try that again. Good morning, everyone. Oh, fantastic. Welcome back. My name is Jennifer Ahern. I'm the Permanent Secretary and Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture, and I am extremely excited to welcome you back, or welcome you if it's the first day you've joined us, for the third day of the 7th Annual National Healthcare Conference. How are you guys doing? Are you enjoying the conference so far? Yeah? What about yesterday's speakers? Yeah, so if you are just joining us, you've missed so much. Where have you been? We had a fantastic day yesterday, a great lineup of speakers, all kinds of incredible information that we went through. And I wasn't able, we had our breakout session in here on the aging brain, but I heard the other two, Teching Up Your Health, was really great. And the Saving Face one was good too. So I hope you all have been enjoying it. Don't forget, if you did miss anything, you will have the opportunity to view it a little bit later. We've got the awesome crew from Government Information Services. Give us a wave, Linford. Good morning. They've been videotaping all of the sessions, and they will be available online, healthcareconference.ky, after the conference. So, and even if you did catch it and you liked it so much you want to watch it again, you'll have that opportunity as well. So, how'd you guys like your breakfast? It was good? Yeah? That was the extra special breakfast sponsored by the Ministry of Health and Culture. Yay! All right. If you haven't yet done so, please, please, please make sure you visit our exhibitors and thank our sponsors. If it wasn't for our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to offer this conference free of charge year after year. Huge thank you to our cocktail reception sponsors, Ironshore Pharmaceuticals, our premium sponsors, 3T, BAF Insurance, Cleveland Clinic, Florida, the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority, DART, Pinnacle Media, Tenet, and Tower. And thank you also, Cineco. They sponsored our speaker-sponsored dinner last night, which was really fantastic. The other thing I want to ask you to do, you got your pens ready? We talked about making lists yesterday in the Aging Brain session. So this is your to-do list for today. You're going to check out the exhibitors. You're going to get your flu shot. You're going to check out next door as well. With the flu shots, we also have some hyperbaric chambers. You may have been wondering what those odd-shaped things are, what they are exactly. That's the hyperbaric chambers. So take an opportunity, find out a little bit about that. You go out the door and to your left, you can also get your health check done. So make sure you do that as well. Don't forget, we have evaluation forms. Fill those out. And before you leave us today, please do recycle, because we are also the ministry responsible for environmental health. So we're going to recycle the lanyards. There's a basket on the hallway. Make sure you leave that behind. All right. You guys ready? We've got an awesome morning planned. I want you all to remember that we do have some wireless, although I understand we're having a bit of issue with the Wi-Fi right now. So if you're having trouble logging on, we're on it. We're going to fix it. But the password is Generali, and that's because it's sponsored by Generali Worldwide. And while we're talking about phones, please take a second. I heard a few ringing this morning while people were having their breakfast. If you guys can all check your phones, please. Make sure that they are on silent or vibrate, or you could even turn them off. Ooh, I don't know if I'd be able to do that, actually. But just please make sure that they're on silent so we don't disturb our speakers. All right, and I also want to thank, in addition to all the other sponsors, Cayman Airways, because they sponsored the delegates from Cayman BRAC. We got the Brackers in the house? Anybody here yet? Oh, okay, welcome guys. Thanks for making the trip across, and big thanks to Cayman Airways for making that possible. And one other thing before I move on, we've got the NCVO telethon going on tonight from 7 p.m. to midnight on Cayman 27 and Radio Cayman. So please make sure that you do support them. That's the National Council of Voluntary Organizations. Sorry, I speak in acronyms all the time, so I'll break that one down for you. So they've got their fundraising telethon on tonight, 7 p.m. to midnight. Make sure you tune in and support them. They do some fantastic work in the community. Okay, let's get down to it. Let's get back to the professionals and hear some more about chapters of a healthy life. Our first speaker this morning is Louis Tenenbaum. He's the founder and president of Homes Renewed, and he's going to speak to us today about aging. Is it a book or a screenplay? Louis straddles the aging, building, and policy worlds. He's a leading authority on aging in place, the idea that our homes are the most desirable and economical place for housing and care. His white paper, Aging in Place 2.0, Rethinking Solutions to the Home Care Challenge, was published by MetLife Mature Market Institute, explained his practical vision for our vital communities whose commitment to dignity and respect for older citizens results in healthy local economies, and he is a standard for this topic. Tenenbaum, the first design-build contractor to focus his remodeling company on aging in place in the early 1990s, has over 25 years' experience working with families and individuals, designers and developers, healthcare, product manufacturers, and community leaders on improving individual homes, products, and communities. He was an expert and first instructor for the Certified Aging in Place Specialist Program, developed in partnership between the AARP and the National Association of Home Builders. In September 2016, Tenenbaum received the HIVE, H-I-V-E Award for Building Industry Innovators, that's Housing Innovation, Vision, and Economics, and he founded Homes Renewed, a coalition focused on policy to update houses through public-private investment partnership by making it less expensive to remodel homes the age-friendly way. Louis, who has 2 young adult children, lives in Washington, D.C. suburbs, and he is a biker, whitewater kayaker, skier, and has practiced yoga for more than 30 years. He enjoys many giving and spiritual communities, and he loves the irony of waking up stiff and sore every morning while feeling vibrant every day. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Louis Tenenbaum.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. I am very grateful to be here, to be breathing again this morning, to have the sun come up, to have the earth solid under my feet, and I imagine you are too. A little about me. As Jennifer said, I started into this as a contractor, but I've been doing it for about 25 years. So I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a social worker, I'm none of those things. So I'm a little bit on the outside, and I think that gives me, as it often does, the benefit of a little perspective. So going into that now, I'm going to talk about, I was really intrigued by this program title, this idea of a chapter in a book, and it made me wonder, so I'm going to talk about that in the beginning, about whether it's a chapter or maybe it's a screenplay, and just what is aging, what do we experience, and then go on and talk about aging in place, what that is, and why it's important, and then talk about my ideas for an economical, dignified aging infrastructure, and conclude from there. So, what is aging? When does it start? So how many, raise your hand if, and keep it up. Raise your hand if you're 60 years old. 65, 70, 75. So the question is, are any of these old? Does anyone think of themselves as old in any of those categories? When does it start? I don't know, because most people of whatever age think they're about 25. Right? Because that's when you remember having a good time, and you're still having a good time. And I noticed maybe aging starts when you retire. I noticed that the Cayman government just changed the age of retirement from 60 to 65. Does that now define aging as 65 or just retirement? What is retirement? When you're an empty nester, is that a possibility? You know, when your children have left and you now have more time on your hands, maybe you have to figure out who that person is you've been living with all these years and what kind of relationship you have with them. Is that what aging's about? When you have an illness. Now, a few years ago, I was ill. I was hospitalized for 8 days, and I think I felt old. But a few weeks after that, I felt young again, or normal, or whatever it is. When you're born, and Dr. Hospitalis mentioned this yesterday as well, that aging is a process throughout your entire life. So how many of you are caregivers? Meaning there's someone, or maybe more than one person, that you come in contact with at least about once a week to check up on them. I mean, maybe you are dealing with someone every day, but you're a caregiver if once a week or so you are checking up on someone and maybe thinking about them or worrying about them more often than that. So in terms of aging and caregiving, the questions are really about both you and the caregivee, the people you are dealing with and caring for. Is everyone's experience similar? I think the answer is pretty resoundingly no. Everyone's experience is very different. How many people are married? And I ask this in part because that has an impact. Your social connections has a real impact on how well you age or how much difficulty you have. Within a couple, we see one person who, why is she with him? Well, in fact, they're the same age. Sometimes older, sometimes younger, sometimes, physically difficulties, sometimes not. Within a couple. So they've aged together in many cases, and yet their paths diverge in terms of aging. How many have children? And this has an impact. Many of us who have children think that people who don't are disconnected, and vice versa, from what goes on in life and what's important in life. But it's also important because as those of us who are caregivers, we recognize that we may have, if our children turn out the way we hope, that capability behind us, that support network, and other aspects of support networks. And those are very important for aging. Within a family, we see a brother and a sister, or twins even, who age much differently, who become much different as they go through life, even though they've started from the same family background and at least some of the same genetic makeup. So the point really is that there's a great deal of variation in aging and in our experiences. But mostly we're familiar with the extremes. Dr. Hospitales and others have talked about non-communicable diseases. I didn't even know that phrase, but I understand what they're talking about. So we think about, in terms of extremes, we think about primarily those who are unlucky. Whether they're contributors or not, they've developed early or severely the conditions of aging, or a little later. But we all know people who we think of as old because of their health conditions and other conditions in their life. Illnesses like COPD, heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, progressive neurological conditions like MS, Parkinson's, ALS, and MSA. These are conditions I've dealt with, and it's really tough on these people. And the many forms and progressions of dementia, which we spoke about yesterday afternoon, which really do introduce the idea of aging in a very visceral way. And poverty, because poverty has an impact. And having no family or partner, that also has an impact because that person is stuck out on their own and they don't have the social connections. They're now saying that social isolation is equal to smoking in how bad it is for your health. And grumpiness. We all know that grumpy old man or grumpy old lady. I remember running by one house in my neighborhood when I was a kid because Granny Badwitch lived there. Who knows what was with that lady or whether she was a witch or not? But the fact is that we have this impression that there are some people who have kind of a bad attitude and a bad experience, and they're grumpy, and that makes them seem old. And we also have images in our minds of the other extreme. People who are lucky, who have wonderful good health, plenty of money. They have family, they have friends, they're going out this way or that way, playing tennis in the morning, playing bridge in the evening. They are seemingly without a care in the world. And the problem for most of us is that they are poster children for unfair goals that most of us can only fail to meet. Probably even these smiling, happy people that we see in ads and so forth have problems that we're not knowing, we just don't know about. So the truth is that it's more about the middle. As with many things, it's not about the extreme. Most people have some money, or many people have some money, but maybe not all you want. Health conditions that we may not be too debilitating, but you're taking 2 or 3 medications a day. Often people will say, oh, I'm in good health, but they're taking 2 or 3 medications. They have conditions that they're monitoring, hopefully carefully and well. They have family and friends that provide some support as needed. They're checking in and maybe doing some shopping and maybe coming by to change the light bulbs. But we all know there are periods, and in fact, many times these seem like cycles, when it's not easy getting older. When that support network is strained, maybe you don't want to call again because you just called the other day. Maybe you don't want to call to find out because it may mean you have to go do something that you just don't want to fit into your day. And who to call about what is just not clear. That's very often the case, whether it's an illness or you need to get somewhere or you don't know what to do about this or that. It's very confusing. So the fact is that aging is not uniform at all. Only about 25%, according to a MacArthur Foundation study, is genetic, much less than we think. Luck is a big factor. You know, you had an injury or a car accident or something when you were younger, and it means your hip has always kind of been sore, but then as you get older, it turns into pretty severe arthritis. Diet, exercise, attitude, social circumstances, and supports are also huge factors. A lot of this, and this is something we've been discussing a lot in the past few days, is that a lot of it can be influenced by personal behavior and decisions, by policy and infrastructure, and by this interdependence that we must really rely on throughout our lives. So variations abound. And I have some pictures talking about one of my favorite issues. So this is someone about my age, famous guy. I think it's Strom Thurmond. And this is him a little older than I am now. And this is showing him even much older when he was still in the Senator Congress of the United States into, I think, his 100th year. So longevity is really huge and it's really new. It's really new. When my father was 55 in 1975, he called me, I was a sophomore in college, and said he had an offer on the family business. Did I want it? And I said, no, I don't want the family business, Dad. And he said, great, because I sold it to somebody. I said, okay, well, how's that going to work for you? And he said, they're going to pay me for 17 years. I'll be 72. Who lives past 72? This was just 1975. My father said, who lives past 72? And I didn't argue with him at all. He died at age 89. And that has been the change we've seen in those years. So I highlighted, I'm not sure if you can see it, yes, the two colors 1935, the two dates 1935 and 1965. These are the dates of Social Security in the United States. 1935, life expectancy was 61. The whole idea behind Social Security was paying people a pension, but frankly, we weren't planning to pay anyone because almost nobody got to be that old. It was a really good campaign idea. And in 1965, we brought in Medicare, where we were going to cover people's insurance after 65, and life expectancy was 71. So we weren't really going to pay for very much health problems either. Another really good campaign idea. But what happens is that change starts around 75 and 79, and now here in the Caymans, where life expectancy exceeds that in the United States, I think it's 82 or 84 or something like that. There's a lot of change that goes on in your life starting from 75 or 79, and a lot of it has to do with more disability and with usage of health care. People live past their savings. You know, when my father thought he was going to have enough money to make it to 72, and that would be all right. And thank goodness at that time for inflation, not that it was such a good thing in general, but he had enough money to make it through to 89. There's not enough money or time to build enough senior housing that nobody wants to go to. When I came into the airport and I passed through passport control, they asked me what I was doing here. I said I was talking about aging and aging housing, and he said, I ain't going. And I said, okay, and he stamped me and I went through. But it's very easy to get people to just respond to that, and the answer is they don't want to go, it's expensive, we don't want to build it, we don't have time, and we don't have money. So the fact is that there are more older people and there are older people. And I think that older people is really significant. There are fewer caregivers to pay to payers. You know, fewer people paying in and fewer people available. In a country like this, I imagine a lot of younger people move on to maybe a different part of the world, and so they're not there to take care of family. In fact, it's not really the good old days that we imagine, right? We have this image that families took care of each other. Well, they did for 5 years or 7 years or 9 years, but they didn't do it for 25 years. So it's not a failing of that family tradition and family values. It's really just the change. Because the interesting thing is when Social Security kicked in 1935 in the United States, what people did was go out and rent apartments. They didn't want to live with the kids. They didn't want to be embroiled in their family. People want to be on their own, to make their own choices about life, where they're going to live, and so forth. So when I was given this topic about life being a chapter, aging being a chapter in life, I responded and thought about it, and I decided that to me, it's more like a screenplay or a scene in a movie. It's not static, but ever moving. Little, imperceptible, almost very subtle, almost imperceptible change. One page at a time, like in a flip book that you might draw, that appears to be smooth, but in fact is little tiny differences. Individuals are different. Change happens to those individuals all the time, and consequently, the needs change too. So independence is in fact a misnomer throughout our lives. It's interdependence is the reality, interdependence. Everyone is connected. On a continuum from birth, when you're very young, you are totally dependent. You grow into younger years where you stretch out, move away. You are walking at the mall and you tell your parents not to be near you, to walk away from you a few steps because, in fact, you somehow came out without any parents and you want your friends to recognize that you're not connected to anybody. And then as you go through life, you continue to call and the phone calls happen. And then what happens is as we get older, the proximity piece becomes more important again, because we need help. The significance of that change as we age is that it becomes more acute to be on your own completely or to seem on your own. It's harder to do everything yourself, and recovery takes much longer. When you sprain your ankle on the soccer field when you're 12 or 14, you're back out running the next day. If you sprain your ankle tripping over a curb when you're 60 or 65 or 70 or 80, it takes maybe a couple weeks to recover from that, and you're paying attention to it. But, in fact, it's just matters of degree. The proximity factor is matters of degree. 1 week you need a little of this, the next week you don't need any help, the next 2 weeks you need more help. And that's the way our support networks and our systems must evolve. Because change is probably the only constant in aging, in fact, in life in general. Change is the constant. So for me, aging is like an ecosystem. Even organisms of the same species are not exactly the same. Think about puppies in a litter. One is docile, one is a little more aggressive. Which kind do you want? They're all different. And their life course is different as well because a factor of the events that go on, circumstances that they encounter. There are dogs from one litter, for example, that one is afraid of thunder and the other isn't afraid of thunder. One had a bad experience and the other didn't have a bad experience. We all have this sort of approach in life. So somehow, nature maintains a balance, a stasis. Certainly not static, always changing, a dynamic equilibrium. That's what it's called, a dynamic equilibrium. So life is a kaleidoscope starting from an enormous variety, moving through a large number of factors, spinning and changing over time for each individual. And in fact, every day, every week is like waves at the beach. Things go in and things go out. And if the connections aren't made, if these things don't run smoothly, gaps occur. And that's when things get difficult, expensive, and miserable. If you don't get the medical care you need, you end up getting sick, and then you're going to the hospital, and then it's expensive, and then you're miserable, and then your family has to schlep over there and take care of you, or see which day you're going to be out and put more milk in the refrigerator because you've been gone for a week. So it's a dynamic interplay to maintain a constantly shifting balance. And in biology, we call it homeostasis. So in summary, from this introduction, the aging experience is not uniform. Individuals, family, access to resources, and those resources, health and luck, are all factors. Longevity is not new. So traditional ideas do not really apply. And in fact, many of our institutions are outdated because they were predate longevity and they haven't been kept up. So change and complexity are the watchwords. And that leads us to a question about what's the goal in aging. I don't like the word success, but I would say economical aging is a goal, and I would say dignified aging is a goal. So that's where I'm headed. And to get to those things, there's no silver bullet. We have to invent and support this dynamic system with many parts and pieces. So here's an image I have of lots of the parts and pieces that I find to be relevant to aging with economy and dignity. And that system includes human resources, which is us, ourselves as individuals, other members of our family, our friends, paid caregivers, and the professionals we encounter. Financial savings, financial resources like savings, pensions, government programs, and real estate. Real estate is a capital asset, and how we use it is important. We have to be efficient and effective in the way we use all these resources. And healthcare, and primarily by doing what is possible to avoid cost and misery. So we need to identify through all kinds of monitoring of ourselves and technical monitoring, and intervene. I'm going to speak about a few pieces of this morning. Livable community is one. I'm going to define that a little bit. Technology that gives value for people, not technology for its own sake. Transportation, personal care, and preventative care. Those are sort of the traditional pieces of aging. The social interaction piece is really important, and all kinds of evidence says that. And encouragement of personal responsibility. And finally, I'm going to start talking with my background, which is the supportive house. So what is aging in place? The ability to stay in one's home of choice, regardless of changing health. The most dignified and economical housing and care for older citizens. Not being forced to move from your home of choice as health changes occur. So if you can't get up the steps and you no longer have a leg, you only have one now from diabetes, can you still get back in your house? How does the misery of that stroke or amputation or heart condition make you lose the choice that you have of the home you love and take you out of your home so you never see the inside again? That's not aging in place. And it's not necessarily your home of many years. People move when they, hit that empty nester spot or that retirement spot. They move to be closer to water or away from water, or closer to the city or away from the city. People move for all kinds of reasons. So it's not about the home that you've lived in for a long time as much as the home that you've chosen to live in. And some people move to be closer to family. Some people move to be further from family as they get that opportunity. So it toggles on two factors, choice and change. This is from a Harvard study from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. Housing is the linchpin of well-being. The bulk of long-term care will occur in single family, and this is in the States. I don't know. Let me preface all of this by, I don't really know the housing circumstances in Cayman. So I'm going to be talking about what I know, and I hope and think it will apply. The bulk of long-term care will occur in single-family owner-occupied homes, not institutions, not facilities. But the homes are not prepared. This is another function of longevity. The homes were built for younger people. The costs of providing long-term care in the home are generally much less than in institutions. So those are really important. Why is it economical? Because it uses the client's own real estate instead of the government moving you into a place that it builds or buys. Surveys, it's also important when you are living at home that you get to decide when you eat and what you eat and when you wake up and when you go to bed. People are happier when they have control over the situation themselves. There's the factors of undercare and overcare. You need help with the bathroom, so they also start to give you meals because they've taken you away from your kitchen. And now you learn helplessness. You forget how to cook. You start paying less attention, and that's when your mind starts to go down. And in fact, there's, in undercare situations when you're at home and you don't have the food that you need, maybe you need food delivered, so your nutrition is down, goes down. Overcare when we are paying for more than we need. So it really needs to be about what's called just-in-time resources in the auto industry and other manufacturing. The stuff you need has to show up right on time. And there's something called environmental press. If the environment is too hard for you to manage, it's debilitating. Similarly, if the environment is too easy for you to manage, everything doesn't require thinking and thoughtfulness, which is what happens when people are moved into facilities and they don't have to decide what to eat today or when to eat it or whether they want visitors or what time the visitors might come or when they go to bed or when they wake up. That's when minds start to falter. And there is this concept of the compression of morbidity. What we all want, Dr. Hospitale spoke about falling out of a mango tree at age 95. Basically, happiness in our imagination is dying of a heart attack on the golf course, right? Because you're out there, you're active, you die, and you're not debilitated forever. So to the degree that we can provide the resources and take personal responsibility and compress our morbidity, our bad life and health experience to a very short time, that seems to be the way to go. But there is, really simple things. Care is cheaper and better at home, particularly using family resources, because families find it easier to help and take care of people in homes. And we will use technology to most advantage. So what is required? A house that supports you. And your house has to be a tool, not just an asset. Financial planners are often saying, you have to consider the value of your house. But your house doesn't have much value if you can't get into the bathroom. So it's got to be a tool as well as an asset. And it helps us to avoid falls. It's easier to come home from rehab if your house is prepared. So let's say you do have an injury or an illness and you want to get out. You can get out sooner if you can get into that house and safely use the bathroom. That saves money and you get better faster because you're in your own home. It makes caregiving safe and ergonomic. So caregiving is very dangerous. It's almost as dangerous as the construction industry. People throw their backs out, and if your family member throws their back out, if your spouse throws their back out, you both fall down on the job, right? The job is over. The deal is over. So I want to see the house as a platform for economical services to scale. What are the factors in your house? You need to be able to get in and out. You need to be able to move around inside the house. You need a bedroom and a bathroom where you can get to the bed, the storage, whether it's your clothes, the roll of toilet paper you need to get out, your toothbrush and all that, and get to all those activities. Food prep and handling, you have to be able to get into the refrigerator and at least a couple cupboards, be able to make yourself a meal and have a reasonable place to sit down and eat it. There's the home office function, one of the instrumental activities of daily living, that you need to be able to pay your bills, write your checks, have enough light to do it, access to your stamps and so forth. Entertainment, which is really important, whether you are watching television, listening to music, having people in as guests, reading a book. I worked with one client who somehow in the conversation she was a little confused, and finally it turned out she'd moved her chair in order to have a handhold walking down the hall. But now the lamp that that was next to that chair where she did her reading was too far from the chair to provide light at the lamp. And she was just confused about what to do, so she'd stopped reading. Well, we got her an extension cord. It seems simple, but you know what? It wasn't to her. And these are really important things to consider. And then exercise, and particularly for people with disabilities and so forth, the storage of exercise equipment is really a consideration. And then enjoying the outdoors. I mean, you see this picture. How many people have I had who've said just this to me? If I can't get to my garden, if I can't get to enjoy the birds singing and so forth, I don't want to live here. And then I'll just be happy to move on. So for me, it's about strategy. There's more than one way to skin a cat. With every household, that's the case. Each client has unique goals. What's important to one person, like reading to this person, is not important to somebody else who may want to watch television, and vice versa. Every situation is different, and we all know this. Every house is different. Even houses that may have been built the same 40 years ago, they're different over the course of the household's life because of the people in it who've changed it. So it's very personal. It's about the family and the client. It's about the client's condition. Are they ambulatory? What are their cognitive issues? What are their daily routines? Family and financial resources are really important. And then, now and in the future, we need to think about this house now for our current condition, but if we're going to take a look at the house and we don't think about where our condition might be in a few years, we're doing ourselves a disservice because change is that constant. So the tools we use for this are design, changing the way rooms are organized possibly, or widening a door. Equipment, such as assistive technologies like a walker or maybe a ceiling lift or something else like that, a cane, a wheelchair. And then the services that come in and out as necessary. Maybe one week you need some services 2 hours a day, 3 days a week, and the next week you need 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. If we can bring that up and bring that down, that's how we can be economical with those services. So, in terms of strategy, these are rolling shower commode chairs. They have toilet seats, but just look at the wheels on these wheelchairs, right? So the wheelchair on the bottom has wider wheels and hand rims for self-operation. The wheelchair on the top, on the right, doesn't have that. It's narrower. It's the same chair, but with a different set of wheels. So it's narrower. So I was in someone's home one day, and they said, we can't get the wheelchair through the door. How can we widen the door? It was going to be very expensive. They had a nice marble floor in their foyer. And I noticed that the person sitting there in the wheelchair, sort of paying attention to the conversation, I said, does this person ever operate the wheelchair themselves? They said, no. So I got a screwdriver from the kitchen and took off the hand rims. You know, they're little rims that don't touch the floor that you put your hands on. And I narrowed the wheelchair by 1.5 inches on each side, and it fit through the door. That was the cheapest solution, and it didn't disturb the way they were using it. In fact, the chair with the smaller wheels would have been even better because it would have fit through the door more easily. So the solution needs to be very thoughtful, and you consider all kinds of things. That's what I call strategy. That thing about widening the door is something people call about all the time. I've got to widen the door to get into my bathroom. I say, what are you going to do when you get in the bathroom? Well, I don't know. I just need to get in there. And I say, well, but, how do you get in and out of bed? And they say, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because it's so hard. So if you can't get in and out of bed, maybe you also can't get on and off the toilet, which is what the person wants to do. So maybe ceiling lift equipment like this, which is equipment rather than people, can help more easily to get somebody into and out of bed, into and out of their wheelchair. So I've had clients who say, oh my gosh, thank God for that ceiling lift. We can hire the little lady who lives down the street, who's really nice, to pick up my big son, in this case, instead of this guy who smokes and swears and smells, but who's strong enough to make the move. So let's use equipment sometimes as a part of the strategy. So we talked about door widening. And now, I'm going to tell you that what I've said to you may seem contradictory. I'm talking about very much the very personal part of this for someone's life, and I'm also talking very much about the big picture and thinking about it now and thinking about it later. And we have another tool for that. It's called universal design. So regular design is the design that accommodates pretty much everyone in this room. People who are ambulatory, who have a good reach, whose shoulders aren't stiff, they can reach the door hand, they can grasp the door. And then universal design is the bigger concept. Now, most people will say, oh, you're building for people with disabilities or handicaps. I go, no, I'm building for everyone. It's the narrower group of people who build the standard homes that's building for a smaller group. Does that make sense? So that's universal design. And there are a couple issues with universal design. So first of all, it's about the individual house, the existing house. It's about this idea of what we're trying to do, and it's also about the individual needs. And there's a sweet spot there for money and everything else in universal design. But there are also what I call corollary benefits. So when we put the Americans with Disabilities Act came in 1993 and decided that we needed to have curb cuts at every corner. Well, what happened? People on bicycles started to use them. So the fact that we began a system to accommodate people and bring into inclusion people with disabilities who were using wheelchairs, we now all of a sudden had a great opportunity for people to ride their bikes more easily up and down the street. And you know, at the same time we did this miraculous thing, we put wheels on our suitcases because you could now pull them along the street up and down the curb. There's another one, I'm not sure here if there's closed captioning on television, but the fact is that closed captioning was about including people with hearing difficulties and impairments. But in fact, it has netted this gain of being able to read the news or television when you're sitting in a bar or other noisy place or airport waiting area. So I'm going to get into housing a little bit here. Here's an image, and remember, I don't know much about housing here on this beautiful island. Here's an image, you know, this person has a scooter, and they have a ramp which may be okay. It's a little steep. It's probably scary to be in that scooter going down the ramp because you feel like you're falling forward. But most important is, and I'll point it out here a little bit if I can work this thing, the ramp only gets up to the porch. It doesn't get into the house. There's still a step. So that scooter ain't going in that house. Do you see it? There's a step at the top of the ramp. And next is, here's another one, and I point this out because I just ride around and take pictures of this kind of stuff. Great Neighbors built this fantastic stiff ramp, but it's got a 9-inch step at the top of it. I knocked on the door and asked the woman about it, and she said, we can't get my son inside. We love our neighbors for caring about us, but there is some detail to doing this stuff to get it right. Here's another one. It's very short and simple, but you can see there, with only those two short steps, that's the length the ramp needs to be. It's not like you just put a plank on top of the stairs. It needs to be longer than that. The rule of thumb is 1 inch per 12 inches, 1 inch of rise per 12 inches of run. And here's another one. This one had to be rebuilt because the porch, they originally built the ramp up and covered the porch. They did an okay job. But the porch columns were so close that you couldn't open the storm door if you were sitting there on the porch with the wheelchair. So the details are really important for a lot of this stuff. And this one shows another wooden ramp. You know, this is pretty simple stuff, but it needs to be done. Here's a home with just a few steps at the door, and this is after we changed it. We put a cover over the door, and so that you're out of the rain while you're standing there unlocking the door, and you have a light so that you can see it. And we eliminated the step. And I'm telling you, this woman, I went back to get my ladder, and this woman came out coincidentally on her way to the airport, wheeling her suitcase out of her home for the first time. I did not set it up. Here's another one. We took this house and pushed out the front of it and created another no-step entry at the house. So the point is that if you do it well and you do it nicely, it looks fine. It looks great. It doesn't look bad to have a home without steps. Here's another one, a home where they changed the steps and colored the concrete. And another one I found just walking down the street of a beautiful brick path leading right up to the door. That one is a brand new home in a community that requires new homes to have at least one no-step entry in Illinois through some policy that local people got together with an ordinance called visitability. And I want to just show you this one because this is a very nice, beautiful sort of a job until you notice that they forgot to get it in the front door again. That whole beautiful reworking of the front yard in that home, and they didn't get in the door. There's also equipment that can be used for this sort of thing. This is a lift that can be planted. Now this one's outside the back. Here's another one. You go along the side of the house to the porch, and in fact the lift is hidden in the porch, so you don't even really see it from the street of the house. And talking about kitchens just a little bit. So one of the watchwords is multiple height work surfaces. So you see this area where the red cup is there and the plate of food, that's a lower work surface. There's an area there where a person can be sitting. So, if you're preparing for a holiday and you're just tired, why do you have to stand up to cook? Why can't you sit down at a counter if it's the right height and cook at the counter? We also have the plugs there. I hope you can see them. The plugs and switches, because if you're seated, you can't reach those switches, and the plugs at the back of the counter if you're rolling around in there. And we have, as you can see, the opening so your knees can get under the sink and work there. Here's another kitchen. It looks like a nice one. I was proud and happy to be working on it. And I'm turning these pages, but I'm not really. So this is it when it's opened up. There's a hot pad there right next to the oven. The oven is at an unusual height, so you can take things out of the oven easily. There's a knee space at the sink with the controls underneath for the light and the garbage disposal. There's a little cutting board area, and you're open to the to sitting at the stovetop while you're cooking. And also you can see they use a rolling cart. So rather than carry things from the kitchen to the dining area, they load that rolling cart and wheel them out there. And when they clear the table, they use that rolling cart in reverse. In terms of staircase, maneuvering around the house, a stair rail on each side is really important, because maybe you've got stuff in your arm and you have one good hand and you use it going up, and then you turn around to go down, and it's on the other side. So it's good to have a stair rail on both sides. And sometimes we use equipment to get up the stairs or an elevator. So if you have a 2-story house or more, there's really only 3 ways. One is you change the use of rooms. Someone sleeps in a room that maybe had another purpose before, and you enlarge and make a full bath. Or 2, you get upstairs somehow by putting in an elevator or some other type of piece of equipment, or you add space to the house. Now, there's a lot of variations of those, but there's really just those 3 strategies. And they have to do with resources, the house, the lot, whatever. This is showing my niece, actually, who has cerebral palsy. We rented a home that had an elevator for a vacation and found that the elevator was luxurious, a vanity elevator. She couldn't get her wheelchair into it. It had a narrow door. So she had to revert to her walker to get into the elevator and sit down in it. We could not get the wheelchair in the door. So there's a lot of this stuff, it's not different than those ramps that go to a step that doesn't get into the house. You have to pay attention to the details when you're doing this stuff. And here's a bathroom we have color change on the floor for people who have low vision. As we get older, our eyes cloud a little bit, kind of like a plastic container left out in the sun. And so we're more subject to glare, but also difficult to see. So I put grab bars all over in this bathroom, and a handheld that's on a grab bar. Wherever you reach when you might fall, there should be something strong for you to grip. Another bathroom showing kind of the maneuvering space into that shower area, but also showing that, first of all, the control for the shower is offset, so it's not such a far reach to reach it, whether you're seated or standing. And there's an area next to the toilet for someone to get in and help. So one of my pet peeves is the toilet in a phone booth, you know what I mean? Where there's a little door there and the door swings in. So first of all, if somebody stands up and falls down in that bathroom, you have to break the door over their body to get them and help them out. But second of all, if you're the caregiver and you're trying to help somebody get off the toilet or onto the toilet slowly and safely and carefully, you need space in which to maneuver. So if you have a shower like that, or if you have a shower like that where you can roll into it, and you have a chair like this, so the bathroom is a very dangerous room in the house. It's where a lot of accidents occur. The floor is wet. So if you get up in the morning and you want to shower, you use a chair like this. You roll over the toilet because it's got a toilet seat. You use the toilet. You roll into the shower and wash yourself. You have a handheld through that same hole. You can spray up and clear all kinds of parts of your body, wash and rinse. Then you roll out of the shower, maybe over to the sink and put your makeup on or brush your teeth or something like that. And then now you've drip dried, you roll roll away from the wet area and you stand up. So by having this chair connected to that curbless shower, you have a strategy that eliminates transfers and gets you up and down very easily. Here's another bathroom showing a grip that goes in the middle of the room to help somebody get up off that toilet. You can move it around. You can also seat at that sink, and you see that the sink comes out to you and almost touches your belly, so you don't have to lean very far to brush your teeth and spit in the sink. Here's another one showing a seat that flips up in the shower. So this client originally walked in with a walker, left her walker outside, sat down. Then she started using a rolling shower commode chair. So there's all different ways you can do it if you maintain flexibility. You can also pull up to that sink there and use it very easily. Here's another one, again, showing a big area that we've converted the tub area to a large walk-in area, which also, next to the toilet, provides room for maneuvering. And this is kind of, a little overdone maybe, but you can see that part of what's going on here is that the floor area of the shower is also the entry area to the tub. So by not having a curb in the shower, we're able to use that space twice, sometimes as a shower and sometimes as the tub entry area. So universal design has that advantage of flexible use of spaces. And then this is a lower price point shower. This is a prefabricated unit that fits in and also provides easy access. Whether you are walking with a shuffling gait so that you don't want to try to step over that bump into the shower, and certainly not step over that bump into the tub, the huge step into the tub, or you're rolling in, having a curbless shower has a lot more sense. And here's another one. This was in an apartment building. We changed it over. It's a pretty luxurious looking unit. You can see the drains at the end. We couldn't change it. But you can do this on the top floor of a large building. It doesn't leak. And this also has, walk around area, grab bars at the toilet, and that sink that you can get your belly right up to. This is in the wall toilet system, which, space is at a premium, but with this, you move the toilet back 5 or 6 inches closer to the wall. And that can be the difference in making a bathroom really functional. So this is kind of my favorite nerdy bathroom, right? You can sit, the seat isn't fixed. You can sit to the left, you can sit to the right. You can hang the shower holder to the left or the right. A caregiver can operate from the left or the right. All these flexible operations, depending on, one day you've strained your shoulder playing tennis, or in my case, kayaking, and I want to use the other shoulder, so I flip it around. So the goals are safer, reduced falls, the ability to rehab more quickly in your home in comfort, and caregiving that is safe in order to make it cheaper and easier to live at home throughout your life. I wanted to show you a couple bloopers. This is some woman asked the plumber or contractor to build a shower with no curb, and this is what she got. Here's another one. She said, I don't want, that flat piece in the shower, and she got this knife edge that of a curb in the shower. So it's important to get this right to know what we're doing. It's not random. And then this is one of my new ones. It's conventional wisdom. So what do I see in this? I'm not sure what you see, but I see a seat that is kind of hard to get to by its location, a curb still on the floor, and a handheld that is too high to be useful to the person seated on that seat, and shower controls that can't be reached either. So who's sitting there? What is this about? Do you see what I'm talking about? It's kind of the conventional wisdom, and I see this bathroom all the time, but it doesn't really work. So one of my favorite devices is the toilet seat commode. I put one on immediately moving into my new home about 1.5 years ago because I had one at my other home. My kids once asked me, what is that thing all about, Dad? Because I had a model in my car that I would take to booths like this. And I said, well, when you clean up from the dog, do you wash your hands or do you wipe your hands? And they said, oh, I get it. So this provides warm water, and some of them provide warm air spray. So it's more sanitary. It's more pleasant. And it reduces that sort of intermode where someone you don't know or someone you love is involved in this very intimate activity. It's a technology that kind of solves a problem. It's a luxury, it's hygiene, and it's dignity. Here's another pole that you can use next to a chair or near a bed or wherever to get up and get down safely and ergonomically. And look at this guy. Now, people resist grab bars, but this guy doesn't because no one told them that it's about old or disability. He's just smart enough innately to grab the grab bar. And where do you put it? In my view, everywhere. You put the grab bar everywhere you might reach when you might fall because you don't fall and think at the same time. And they come in all kinds of colors and all kinds of shapes. Grab bars are no longer, this isn't your old hospital system's grab bar. The world has changed. I want to talk just a moment about, now this is a washer dryer. So you put the clothes in dirty and they come out dry. You don't put them in and then go down an hour later and take out those wet, heavy towels and throw them physically into a different machine. That sink, I wanted to just show you what it's like, the opposite. That sink is well placed and beautiful, but you got to lean a long way to spit in that sink. And even just to reach over and wash your hands. And an oven with two doors like that eliminates the need to reach over the hot door of the oven as you fold it down. Lever door handles, you can operate with a closed fist if you have arthritis and don't have that grip to turn the knob. By moving the plug up, you can just plug that in and out more easily without pulling on the cord or thinking about how to get it plugged in. And then good chairs. Now these chairs we have in this room allow you to get your toes under your knees, which is where you should have them in order to engage the muscles correctly to stand up. But often fancier chairs have slip covers on them and so forth and keep you from getting your knees in that right spot. So you see people making this 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, ho, out of the chair type thing. So I want to just say that falls steal dreams. People's lives change in a moment. And how many of us have been to the funeral 8 months after? The person got home, but they were never quite right after that fall. It was the first step in the decline of their life. So there is a lot that can be done about falls. It sometimes has to do with lighting, with your glasses being right or wrong. It has to do with medical conditions and mismanagement of meds. It has to do with balance and mobility, which can be improved incredibly by just the slightest bit of exercise. The one thing that is more important than any other factor is exercise. It's walking, it's lifting light weights. Just take 2 soup cans and do this for a little while. Your balance improves substantially. That's the most important thing we can do, and environmental modifications, which I've talked about. I want to talk a little bit about technology, because technology is not a panacea. It's not like we're going to apply technology and start solving these problems. But it is a really important tool in this whole atmosphere of tools, alongside caring, touch, human interaction. So think of it like this. The driverless car is not going to solve the problem of getting you safely in and out the door when you need a hand, or carrying your groceries into the kitchen. All right, those are the parts that are just as important as moving you through space. So there are categories for technology. Social connections, Skyping with family and relatives. This is important. Maybe a Skype group talk if you can't get out. And education and connection through Skyping and other technologies. There's controls and stamina. So just think about this. If you want to get up just a few times a day, maybe, but you know that it's going to get warmer and you want to open the window. Maybe if we have an electrically controlled window that you can operate from your cell phone, it means you don't have to get up off the couch and use up that energy. Maybe you can close the drapes in the middle of the day because they're electrically controlled and keep the sun from baking you, and yet you had the sunlight and the beauty of looking out the window earlier in the day. Maybe it's turning up or down the air conditioning. Maybe it's answering the phone or with an electric lock, unlocking the front door to allow someone in to take care of you without you having to go to the door to open it and then go back to it to lock it. So there's a lot of things that can be done with control. There's telehealth, which can, you can check in with telehealth. You can have your vitals taken and they can keep track of your record. There's a lot of stuff with now, and I spoke with Stephanie yesterday about the possibility that we can have wound control where you take a picture of your wound one day and the next day and the next day. And what we find is with something like facial recognition software, we can see whether that wound is progressing to close or not instead of guessing about it. Things like that. That can be done with technology. There's all kinds of ways that technology can be used. You could talk through that Skype with the doctor or nurse instead of making the trip down there, which uses up energy and stamina. We all, or many of us, are familiar with the type of button, personal emergency response button, that you press, but you have to be conscious, cognizant, etc. while you're doing that. Okay, thank you. There's also medical reminders and reporting of noncompliance, whether it's reporting to your family members or others. So we're talking about chronic and multiple comorbidities. People are not necessarily seem to be in poor health. They're taking medications, but it's just the conditions of life and health. So we need to be able to use these technologies to increase and retract the services that are necessary. Increase the service just at the point when the monitoring tells us we got up slower and later this day than we have for the past 3 weeks. Send someone over to find out what the problem is. Then retract those services when things are back to normal. So there's monitoring vitals and anomalies. There's managing the seamless use of resources. There's watching the movement and routines of daily life and intervening to avoid illness. So how do we test technologies? We test technologies by whether people want to use them or not. There have been a lot of tests that people avoid continuing to use the technology. That's not a good one. But there are also technologies that people do use. So somebody I know's mother didn't want a smartphone until she found out she could give up her car, which she was scared of using, and use a smartphone to call Uber, and it was actually going to save her money every month. All of a sudden, she's big into the smartphone. So it's the value of that technology to the family and the individual user. I'm going to talk just a moment about livable communities. Livable communities are where there are places to go, whether it's shopping or church or recreation. Maybe it's playing bingo, maybe it's playing tennis. There's working transportation systems. A lot of our transportation systems are really designed about commuting and people who are ambulatory. And if you're not quite ambulatory and you're not commuting, does the system work as well for you? And affordable and appropriate lifestyle homes, lifetime homes, which I spoke about. Support in the community includes social activities, exercise classes, cooking classes maybe, all kinds of things that might keep people young and vibrant and socialized. And these are the things that help keep us healthy. There's also a huge factor in what's called shift left. These behavioral activities have an enormous impact on our health. So exercise, sleep, diet, chronic disease management, self-management of those diseases, a social network, and finances are enormously important. So, what's the hard part? The hard part is breaking silos. It's the multi-sectorial factor in this. We need to connect the dots across the silos. So housing ministries, health ministries, social ministries, they all need to work together. And it's not just about government. There was someone I know who was getting a ride every week and a half where she couldn't get out of her apartment, so 2 people had to come and take her out in her wheelchair down the steps, get her into a van, get her to the doctor to have her vitals checked. Well, if we build a ramp for that person rather than providing this transportation, then she can get out more easily. Maybe family and friends can take her to not only to that doctor appointment, but also take her to other places. Take her to the movies, take her to church, take her places where she wants to go. Or maybe we bring in that technology and check her vitals so the doctor has an even better record, maybe more often, that shows the changes more easily and quickly. So we need to connect the dots across silos, and we need to connect the dots across services. Because aging in place, aging in general, is very complex. But when we do it right, we save injuries, we use hospitals less, and we get home and happier with our families more often. So I called my paper that I wrote about this Aging in Place 2.0, because aging in place, as we have it now, is this cobbled together mishmash of services that aren't organized and aren't responsive. And what we need is something that is like an ecosystem. It's a dynamic, intentional, deliberate system of services. The benefits are huge. Higher concentrations of age-friendly houses create an opportunity for all kinds of resources in the community to scale economically. If we have more homes where people are aging well, more businesses and agencies can do a better job of serving them, to use all medical, financial, real estate, human resources as well as possible. So that's why I said, that I think aging is more like a movie, responding to constant change, using resources wisely, upholding choice, respect, and dignity for older people. That's what I think it's about. My final two words are, what I just said, that there are really good opportunities for businesses and agencies to support people. But also, if we are going to continue promoting longevity, if we're going to reach to 90 or 95 or 100, why are we doing that if we're not going to support what we already have in terms of longevity with the services that we need to make people economical and happy in the home with their friends of choice? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, but I'm sure that he will be around for the coffee break after Professor Higgs speaks. But I think that was an incredibly eye-opening presentation. Thank you so much for that. I hope you all enjoyed it as well, and a small token of our appreciation.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.